what we're looking at now that we're getting ready to start the second half of the season. So the floor is yours, sir.
Obviously, thank you guys for being here. Just to sum up the first part of the season, just very pleased with the way that our guys attacked the season. We talk about winning during the week, and the thing that I'm most encouraged about with having a young group is just the way they've gone about their business during the week. It hasn't been like pulling teeth to get these guys to practice, and they're taking care of the little small things too in terms of classroom, all the things that we ask them to do to be student athletes, to be holistic student athletes. They're taking care of that. So I really believe that that's a reflection of what you see on the field, because if you can take care of those small details, the big things will take care of themselves. So after 7 games, being 6-1, I mean, obviously disappointing loss to Purdue, and the guys were really frustrated about that. And I think the bye was both a gift and a curse, because we needed it just in terms of health with guys and bumps and bruises, but it was also to chew on that loss for another week without having a chance to go out and redeem yourselves was kind of hard to do. But the guys they're working hard. I can't stress enough how pleased I am with what they've done up until this point. With a young group, we always talk about the standard being the standard of play here for the defense, the standard of play for the defensive line. But when you have young guys, you have to temper the expectations a little bit too, just understanding that that they're going to come along in time. But they're doing the work that they need to do to get there, and I'm excited for the back half of the season. I think that the challenge that we have coming up this week, it's no secret to anybody. Wisconsin's an unbelievable football team, really good up front, and our guys are well aware of the challenge that they have in front of them. But we always talk about doing things together. We talk about being united as a group, and that's what it's going to take. It's going to take every man that's on the bus, every man that's practicing this week to help get this thing done. So with that being said, I'll open it up for questions.
Thank you, Kelvin. The first question this morning is from Scott Dock.
Good morning, Kelvin. How are you?
I'm good. Scott, how are you?
I'm doing great. I wanted to ask you about Wisconsin's O-line. They seem to struggle against Michigan and Notre Dame, two pretty good teams.
Mm-hmm.
But then in the last 3 weeks, they've been typical Wisconsin. What kind of strides have you seen them make, and what are the challenges associated with those improvements if they have any?
The strides that I've seen them make is I think over the past few weeks, as an offensive staff, I think they've decided to put the game in the running back and the offensive line's hands. You look at, I think it was 43 carries versus Army, 61 carries versus Illinois, 51 carries versus Purdue. Those type of stats right there. You're putting the onus on the offensive line and the running backs to get it done and taking it out of the quarterback's hands. And I think that to be able to run the ball that way, to be able to have that many carries, it's really a product of complementary football. We know they're an outstanding defensive football team. They keep their games close. And when you don't have when you're playing a close game or you're playing with a lead, you can run the ball 60 times. Okay, but if you're playing from behind, you can't do that. So the challenge for us is to make sure that on first and second down that we're doing our part to try to create some third and longs, so that the game is not so much on the offensive line and the running backs, that we make those other skilled guys play as well. The guys, the 7-on-7 guys.
The next question, Kelvin, is from Chad Leistico.
Hey, Kelvin, appreciate you always, and appreciate your insight. Can you, Y.A. Black, I know was dealing with a few injuries, during camp, etc. But how has his development come along, and is the bye week? Is he maybe ready for a bigger role after the bye week here?
Everybody's role is going to be the same after the bye week. Hopefully, he does more with the reps that he's given. Like I said before, I'm pleased with the way that all of our guys have played, both the young and the old. And everybody has a role to play. And what YA's role is right now is the reps that he has. He's supposed to get in there, and there shouldn't be a drop off in play. And he succeeded in that. He and Lucas Van Ness, guys that are behind the guys that are behind Logan Lee and behind Noah Shannon, when they go in there, I feel just as confident as when I have those older two guys in there. So just in terms of his development, the practice, you continue to see good things. I think YA has a bright future ahead of him. But before we get to that future, he first needs to master the role that he has right now, and he's doing a good job.
Kelvin, the next question from John Steppe.
Hi, Kelvin. How are you?
Great.
So you mentioned Lucas Van Ness. What do you see as the next step for him in his development?
Just it's for Lucas, a lot of things. It's the margins of victory for him. The margin of victory for the entire group is just concentration and mental focus. Being a young guy, I mean, obviously he's got some physical tools that you can't coach. You can just recruit. He's got long arms. He's got good twitch. But just some of the things that you would expect from an older guy who's had a lot of snaps. You're not going to get that from Lucas right now. And it just, as he continues to play, that game is going to slow down for him. He'll start to recognize things before they actually happen to him, and that's only going to increase his production. I think through 7 games, he's only played 191 snaps. So you can't expect him to see the same things that Van Valkenburg would see. Zalk's up around 400 and something snaps. You can't expect him to see the same thing. So just for his development, just continue to practice well. And then much like YA, the reps that you get on Saturday, the reps that you do play, make them count. Okay, make them count. Don't make the same mistake twice, and just continue to get better.
The next question from Scott Dockerman.
Heck, Kelvin, you've had 2 players that have been dinged up. Ethan Hurkett is out, seems like, for the season, and then you just had the injury to Deontay Craig. It's kind of doubtful. Do you anticipate throwing anybody else into that rotation, or you think you're going to kind of ride with those 7 guys unless there's a catastrophe?
Knock on wood, Scott. You hope there's not a catastrophe, but I'll say that Chris Reams has stepped in very well, and it's Chris is, you never know when you're going to get your opportunity. You never know when you're going to get called up, but first 3 weeks of the season, Chris Reams was down on the scout team, and now he's on the varsity field working with the second group of defensive linemen, and it's about building trust. You talk about trust being earned in drops and lost in buckets. Every single day he goes out and practices, he's earning a little bit more trust with me. Not just practice, but practice well. So he's on the trip. If he's on the trip, he's eligible to go in the game. And obviously there's more experienced guys in front of him. Chris missed a lot of time last year with an injury, so he's still feeling his way through it. But he's a guy that if push comes to shove, he'll be in there and he'll be expected to perform.
Next question from Chad Leistico.
Head coach again. Wisconsin always has a big O line, and you guys' D line is maybe a little undersized compared to others. Like, what is the challenge there? And what are you asking them to do on Saturday to help stop what's obviously a really effective run game?
Well, the challenge is the same every week. It's the same every week, Scott. I talk about our fundamentals, things that we believe in. We believe in playing with great pad level, great leverage, both horizontal and vertical leverage. And whether you're going up against a guy that's 6'5", 320, or you're going up against a guy that's 6'5", 260, if your hat is underneath his hat and your hands are inside, you're going to have a chance to beat the block. So it's going to be like a final almost. It's like the culmination of everything that we talked about when we started in the spring, through the summer and through fall camp. Fundamental football is what's going to get this done, especially at the line of scrimmage. The team with the best pad level, the team that knocks back the line of scrimmage and is able to separate and get off blocks, that's going to be the team that's going to be successful. And so, you work at it day in and day out, week in and week out, and it's got to show up for us on Saturday. Especially, you mentioned us being undersized. That's going to be the case with pretty much everybody we're going to see. But the fundamental part is the thing that we can't. That's non-negotiable for us. We have to make sure we got great pad level. We got to make sure we have our hands inside.
The next question, Coach, from Kennington Smith.
Hey, Coach, appreciate you taking the time to speak with us today. My question kind of coincides with Chad's a little bit. Zach Van Valkenburg speaks a lot about what you emphasize in terms of not leaving any spare change on the field. Spoke about the bigger details in your last answer, but when you look at this matchup specifically with Wisconsin, what are some of those kind of spare change, smaller details that maybe we don't see that y'all see that are going to be emphasized this week in order to be successful?
Yeah, that's a good question, Kenny. You talk about gap sound and fundamentally sound football. You watch Wisconsin, you watch those guys run the ball. Obviously with the big offensive line, but what you don't see is how they use the tight ends and how they use the fullbacks to add extra gaps. Okay, so what may look like an offensive formation with six possible gaps with the tight end with the fullback, that six just became eight. So we have to make sure that we've got our eyes in the right place, and we got our eyes in the right place, and that we're understanding the scheme that we're trying to get to make sure that we get a person with good leverage in every gap. Because if you don't fill every gap, if every gap isn't filled in this run game, those backs are going to find it. They got great backs, and that's how you're going to leak yards in the run game. So just the finer details, talking about leaving meat on the bone or change on the table, whichever way you want to put it, we got to make sure that we have all the gaps accounted for, else it'll be a long day for us.
The next question from Tom Kinkert.
Kelvin, thanks for doing this. Wanted to ask about Max Llewellyn and how he's come along as a true freshman in his development. And is he a possibility, if you get thin, that he could play maybe in the last 4 games?
I don't see it, not right now. Max has been down on the scout team and doing a good job down there. He's been scout team player of the week twice in the 7 games that we've played already. He's a guy just from a fundamental standpoint, doesn't have the fundamental base right now where I could say, yeah, let's get this guy on the field. Could we carve out a role for him? Yeah, that's a possibility, but as we get guys back healthy, I see him, this year, not necessarily putting him on the shelf. He's a guy who's got a bright future. I'm really excited about him, but not in my plans right now for this 5-game stretch down the season, no.
Coach, the next question is from John Steppe.
As your position group goes up against Tyler Linderbaum in practice every day, what makes him so difficult for defenses?
Tyler's got a defensive mentality. He was recruited as a defensive lineman. That's how he plays the game. I mean, this guy's, when we recruited him, I remember watching the game versus Iowa City Regina when he was playing, and I watched him, and he was a monster on defense, and I also saw him snap the ball, and I thought about, well, maybe he could play center too. Not wanting to give him up, but just thinking like this guy's a football player. I think what really separates Tyler from his peers and everybody else that he plays against is just the mentality he plays against. He plays it like a defensive player. He's aggressive. He tries to finish. There's nothing that's just good enough for Tyler. He's trying to punish you. So the mindset, I mean, take the physical attributes out of it. It's the mindset of this guy to want to dominate you, play in and play out. That's what separates him from everybody else.
Coach, the next question is from Scott Dockerman.
Yeah, I've got one. Logan Jones just got back from an injury a couple weeks ago. Is he just too young and inexperienced right now to kind of throw him out? Especially knowing not only this game but the next handful of games, you've got some pretty physical teams on the agenda, and he might be a little bit too inexperienced to handle that, but especially with his knee injury.
Well, it's not necessarily inexperience. It's not inexperience because Logan's one of the most studious guys that I have. Just in terms of even during his injury, he's been a guy that's been coming into my office, wanting to meet before, wanting to meet after, to try to stay into it mentally. What it really boils down to, and this is just just in terms of like fans and injuries and things of that nature. You take a young guy that's dealing with an injury as significant as he had, there's a mental component to it too. And while you may be cleared to come back and everything, he's practicing, he's on the varsity field, he's practicing with us, and we're trying to inch him back slowly but surely. But until it clicks in his mind that thing's really okay, that's when I'll feel comfortable putting him on the field. But right now, it's just not fair. It's not fair to say, okay, he's cleared, let's throw him out there. I'm not going to do that to him because I want him to have success, and I want him to have success in the right way. So it's not inexperience. I'm not worried about the guy in the playbook, the X's and O's. I want him to be confident in that knee.
Okay. My other question is, when you got kind of a youngish offensive line playing against Wisconsin, their pennant pool is as good as anybody ever. They are that way every year. What do you got to concentrate on them when they're trying to play that 2 gap, but all of a sudden somebody kind of breaks down and here comes the guard, and if you're not used to it, you can end up on your ankles, above your head.
Yeah.
What do you impress upon them, and how challenging is it to play, especially play that 2 gap?
Well, the thing that you always go back to the fundamental base, and you wonder why. Well, why do guys play better here at Iowa in year 3 and 4 than they do years in 1 and 2? Is because they're learning that fundamental base. With these guys, Obviously the older guys, Valken, John, Noah, Logan, we've had a lot of time to work with those guys in terms of their fundamental base. The younger guys, I've actually had more time to work with them in their fundamental base than usual, and I attribute that to COVID. Because of COVID, when those guys were still in high school, I was able to have Zoom meetings with them to talk about the X's and O's, the schemes, the calls, and all the tags. So when they got here, what they were learning was the fundamental base. They didn't have to learn, okay, well, when he says this, I do that. We covered all that during COVID. We covered that in April, May, and June before they got here through Zoom calls. So they're probably further ahead in their fundamental base, which is why they're playing the way that they've been playing. They're further ahead in their fundamental base than usual. And it's going to be the ultimate test versus Wisconsin. Now, you can't, it's, two gap, one gap. You got to switch between, that scheme right there just to keep another team on their toes. You can't live in that same defense all the time. So, and what our challenge is knowing when we're in that two gap mode and when we're in that one gap mode and how to govern ourselves accordingly. So again, gets back to the, that mental side of being in tune with the game plan, being in tune with the linebackers, trying to do what they ask us to do, and then executing it. I think we got a good plan this week. And I'm excited to watch these guys. I'm excited to watch these young guys play. It's going to be a great environment for them.
One final question this morning, Coach, and it's coming from John Steppe.
As you're talking about doing the Zoom with the high school players, is that something that you see sticking around post-COVID, since it doesn't seem to be like Zoom is going anywhere?
No, I don't, because during that time I was doing those Zooms, I should have been on the road recruiting, but we couldn't go. So you take all that time where I spent with those guys on, talking X's and O's and schemes of that nature, I'll probably be on a regional flight somewhere trying to find another guy.
All right, Coach, I'll reiterate what everyone else said, and thank you for your time this morning. We know it's valuable, and good luck on Saturday.